Good morning. It's nice to see you all. Thank you for those of you who shared the dance floor with me yesterday. I'm really grateful to have the chance to share stories of amazing artists that I work with, and also specific examples of companies that I've been able to partner with over the last 10 years. Before sharing specific examples of art in space, I want to share a bit about the ArtLifting journey. So from 2007 to 2011, I was a volunteer social worker, helping people get housing, jobs, access to food banks. I learned a lot during those 4 years. Of course, it was during the last recession in 2008, and a lot of my clients desperately wanted a job, but weren't able to find one. Some clients I literally applied to 100 jobs with, and they were lucky when they got a rejection, because at least it was a response. Those 4 years were incredibly frustrating. I kept hearing, "Liz, I want an opportunity, not a handout." But we just apply to jobs, and it felt really hopeless. I thought, how can I redefine what a job is in order to include more people in the economy? That's a much easier question to ask than to answer. So I just had that in the back of my mind for years, but it took a long time to find an answer. After doing social work, I transitioned to being a full-time art therapist in homeless shelters in Boston. And that's when I had this aha moment. I saw amazing artwork that was created in these shelters that would literally end up stuffed in the closets, because there was really limited wall space and there just wasn't a marketplace to sell the work, and all of the shelter staff was really spread thin. As I dug and learned more from other art therapists, I learned that there are about 1,000 existing art therapy groups in the US alone, in shelters and social service agencies. So that meant there were 1,000 closets stuffed of beautiful art. And what a no-brainer. Why don't I just create a marketplace and sell the work? Not just as originals, but also as prints, and license the work, so artists can make unending amounts of money from each piece they create. It was a very kind of simple, obvious idea, but it's been amazing to grow over the years and get to know individual artists and see the impact on them. My brother and I started ArtLifting with $4,000 of our savings 10 years ago, and have since scaled to sell tens of millions worth of artwork, with the majority of the profit going right back to those artists. To give you a bit of context of why we exist, 77% of individuals with disabilities in the US aren't employed. This probably feels like an impossible statistic to break down and try to get closer to 0%. But I think about artists like Charlie French. Why not do what we can to make an impact on him and slowly get to 76% and 75% and closer to 0? I'm going to share 3 artist stories and then share some examples of artwork in space. I've worked with Scott Benner for 10 years. He was one of the first 10 artists that we signed on. Scott experienced what he called the perfect storm about a decade ago. He had been a steel worker for about 30 years, but then the company where he worked shut down. And similar to my social work days, he had that same experience. He applied to jobs, but just didn't have any luck, being a middle-aged man trying to find a job where there wasn't much of a market. But then the perfect storm continued. Scott was diagnosed with Horner's syndrome, which is a rare disease that makes you unpredictably dizzy and confused. So all of a sudden, Scott couldn't even apply to steelworking jobs because of a bout of dizziness hit him while he was operating heavy equipment, would obviously be incredibly dangerous. And then Scott got knocked down again, all within a year. His wife was then diagnosed with cancer. So all of a sudden, they were both unemployed, had really high medical bills. And within the next year or so, Scott went through his 6 figures in savings and ended up homeless. Scott is an incredible artist. He uses just a pen and a sheet of paper to create his masterpieces. This piece was created over 1,300 hours over the course of 6 years. He'd been an artist for fun his whole life, drawing after work, doing his steelworking, and then on weekends. But he had never sold his work and really hadn't shown his work to anyone except a few family members. But then when he was staying in a shelter in Boston, his caseworker saw ArtLifting on the news. We had just launched, and said, why don't you start working with them or at least reach out? It's been so amazing to get to see him soar over the years. He's sold original artwork for tens of thousands. This is him speaking at Google at an employee engagement event. This is the former governor of Massachusetts, Deval Patrick, who purchased Scott's work to hang above his desk in Bain Capital. Scott was on the Today Show and even the cover of the New York Times business section. When I mentioned licensing artwork so artists can make unending amounts from each piece, that's been a great strategy. One example of Scott's work being licensed, it was on Starbucks cards. And I just met Gina from RBC yesterday and learned that our artwork is in RBC offices because we have an awesome partnership with Mohawk. So you can see Scott's work on the floor. It's been incredible not just to see Scott's success in terms of selling his artwork, but also to see him gain housing about 9 years ago and stay in it. Next, I want to share a bit about Mia Brown. She sold work to the CEO of LinkedIn for his office. This artwork was translated into a wall covering for a tech office in California. And Mia shares, I'm an artist who happens to have a disability. Mia has cerebral palsy and isn't able to paint with her hand. So she's incredibly innovative and has found a way to paint with what she calls her magic wand. Mia's early success has continued. We've worked together for about 9 years, and now Warner Media headquarters in Manhattan has floors and floors of her artwork, and she's sold all around the world. This is a different artist named Eric Santamaria. When you see this piece, you probably see a beautiful living room, but then when you zoom in, feel free to call out. Does anyone notice anything interesting about this piece? I think I heard it. Yell out. Tire marks, exactly. So on the bottom edge, you'll see tire marks if you haven't already. Eric, like Mia, has cerebral palsy. Unlike Mia, he doesn't have the neck control to be able to paint with a magic wand. So Eric actually paints with his wheelchair, with the markers or paints on the back bar and the canvas underneath him. About 7 years ago when I met Eric, I was stunned. I had never seen anyone create artwork in this way. He has soared over the years. Oh, I didn't mean that pun, but His artwork is in Delta's LAX lounge. And if any of you get Pottery Barn's catalog, you saw a huge spread with Eric this year. We launched a big partnership with them about 9 months ago. And they had a lot of action shots of Eric creating his work, including features of his collection. I'm really grateful for the impact that we've been able to make over the years on our artists. And that's thanks to amazing partners like you all. We partner with 450 corporations so far. And a lot of people in this room have partnered with us on all different levels. I want to give a shout out to the Fifth Third team. We're partnering on about 100 branches so far, 60 that are completed and 40 that are in the works. One huge theme of this conference has been how can we humanize our spaces, especially as technology has increased. I loved when Gina said yesterday morning, how can we have purpose-led design? Or when EJ said yesterday, how can we create authentic spaces? An obvious way to create authentic spaces is to not just have beautiful artwork, but also share the artist's story. So each of our artists' work comes with a label that has their photo and their bio. And also, if the artist is verbal, it includes a quote from them. In every space that we work in, we also want to share the overall mission of what we're attacking together, of getting that 77% number down closer to 0. Finally, I want to share a few examples of who are these 450 companies that we work with, and what does the artwork look like in space? Since COVID launched, a bit before it, but also it's spread since COVID, we've launched rental rotations. A lot of you are not just in charge of your retail spaces, but also your corporate spaces. And we found that a lot of people are trying to convince people to go to the office post-COVID, but also keep the space fresh and have the space be meaningful. So in about 20 of Google's offices so far, we rent artwork that switches biannually. So you can represent all of your different employee resource groups and have a reason to have an event, an art opening, when each new collection comes in. I love lifting art. So if we end up working together, get ready to take a photo lifting the art. This is our initial partnership with Amazon 6 years ago in their headquarters in Seattle. And I love what John, the head of real estate at Amazon, has shared about our partnership. We launched with that pilot and have since expanded across the country with them. For context on John, he has been at Amazon for over 20 years and is now in charge of 65 million square feet. So we're really grateful to have him and his team as great partners. I was blessed to be at BankSpaces alongside artist Kiana Madison, who created this mural. This is Kiana signing it. And she not only has partnered with PwC, but dozens of corporations, including a year ago, we launched a partnership with Hallmark. So in your local stores, you can look out for the ArtLifting Hallmark collection. To switch to more relevant to the financial industry, this is Wells Fargo's headquarters. Artist Yvette was literally in tears when she found out that her artwork was hanging next to Andy Warhol's in this headquarters. Andy is one of her favorite, it's like she's on a first name basis. Andy Warhol's one of her favorite artists in the world, so it was a real honor. The artist behind this work is named Mark. He has MS and paints with oil. I wish you all could feel and see these originals, because his work is so thick, the paint on it, that it actually takes a year for it to dry. As I mentioned, we're partnering with Fifth Third on about 100 branches. I'm sure Brian and Vikas would be happy to share more details on our partnership. I loved this creative way we partnered, not just having the artwork inside the building, but also outside. And you'll see in the shadow there, you still have the label outside to get to humanize the space. Standard Chartered has also been a great partner. I love what Tony says. Through art, you can tell an amazing story and you can connect that to the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging journey. It's not that hard. Use your company's art collection to advertise your values. Use it to say who you are as a company. And finally, I want to share a bit about our partnership with Bank of America. We launched the partnership with them about 3 years ago. They publicly announced an initial investment 3 years ago of $2 million for 900 branches with ArtLifting art. It has been extraordinary to grow that partnership over the years. The president of Bank of America shared publicly, this was in the initial partnership, but since then, in the fall, he shared publicly that they're going to expand the partnership with ArtLifting to 2,500 branches by 2026. And I loved someone speaking of how to attract and retain customers and employees. Someone commented on that LinkedIn post and said to him, "I just opened a Bank of America account because of your partnership with ArtLifting." It was really special to get to see, like, on such an individual level, how really choosing to create inclusive spaces not only is good for our artists, of course, but also a win-win and good for your business. Bank of America is kind of a unique partnership. They have about 30 pieces in the collection, and then they choose to get either hundreds or thousands of each print. So some pieces were smaller for meeting rooms, and some were bigger for lobbies. A big theme that I heard yesterday was how can we create scalable solutions that are also authentic. So I'd be happy to talk with you all about what we've done there. In finishing, I want to share a little bit about how this Bank of America partnership has affected our artists. Artist Damiano Austin is formerly homeless and experienced cancer. And she shared that the impact has been immeasurable on her. Eric Santamaria, who I started this speech with, you can see his work in probably your local Bank of America branch. He's all over the country now. He's mostly nonverbal, so his mom shared this quote about the impact. About now they were able to afford a new bed for him, a swing, and tools to exercise his legs. Through even just the first year of our partnership, some artists earn 6 figures alone. It literally has been life-changing for our artists, and I'm excited to continue to grow. As I was mentioning, of course, my main focus is our impact on artists, but we've had a huge impact on our clients as well. I know many of you know Rebecca Siegfrieds. She shared, at Bank of America, it's important that we take a human-centric design approach. ArtLifting has been an invaluable partner in supporting this strategy at scale. We're creating engaging and memorable spaces that resonate with the communities we serve and celebrate their diversity and vibrancy. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to share our artist stories. And I challenge you all to think about, what are your company's values and how are you making them visible in your space? Thank you.